This is connection to the poor. This is the reason that we are people of faith. So it's no secret that our faith connects us to people all around the world. But our daily experiences also connect us. Adopting from India and coffee roasting and Maryknoll missions and living abroad, all of these things, meeting immigrants, all of these things connect us. And it's harder and harder in this global world to deny the fact that on a daily basis we are entering into relationship with people from all over. And so this is an opportunity to explore the way that that can be a just relationship. In the spirit of interconnection and relationship, we're going to take a walk with, and I'm sorry this is so fuzzy, with cocoa farmers who are in the conventional trade market. And this is just some pictures of cocoa, so don't worry, you're not missing too much. Cocoa in the conventional trade market, I'm pretty sure a lot of us here are aware, if we know of fair trade, that this isn't always a very happy story. In fact, usually it's not a very happy story. And so I happen to have this. I didn't buy it. I've had it for a while. And I want to begin with a cocoa bean, which grows in a cocoa pod. That's that upper left there. There are 30 beans per pod, and there are 30 pods approximately per tree. And cocoa, which becomes chocolate, is one of the most dangerous and tender cash crops that is grown for a number of reasons. Firstly, because of how tender it is, it's particularly susceptible to pests and ailments. So farmers who work with cocoa are continuously putting themselves at risk through these ailments, through these pests, in order to harvest this cocoa for us. And in the conventional trade model, when pesticides are used to keep the pests to a minimum, they're not educated on healthy pesticides and on the best practices to use to avoid coming into contact with these chemicals. So it's dangerous in that regard. Also, if you've heard of Hershey, if you've heard of fair trade, coffee and chocolate in general is a crop that slave labor is highly documented, slave and child labor. In 2012, in Ghana and the Ivory Coast, which are the two top cocoa producing countries, Global Exchange, which is an international rights organization based on fair trade, found that 1.8 million children were being used in child slavery in 2012. This is obviously a sad reality, but it is a reality, and it's getting better. So we don't want to fully discount companies that are trying very hard, big corporations that are trying very hard to get better, but we just want to be aware. Someone mentioned awareness. We want to be aware of the reality, right? So that's another reason that cocoa is dangerous. Also, each pod, because it's so tender, needs to be individually chopped off the tree with a machete. There's no machine that does this. And once each pod is individually chopped and it's yellow, it's opened individually with a machete, and the cocoa beans are taken out and they're spread on a drying platform for a few months. And those cocoa beans have to be continuously turned over a course of a few months in the right way to make sure that they don't go bitter, because if they go bitter, you can't sell, and all those months of work is for nothing. And often, children, people with good eyesight, small hands, are used to go through these billions and billions of beans in this drying platform and search for the bad ones and pull them out. Because if you have too many bad ones, which are hard to spot, you're not going to be able to sell. And again, your crop is for nothing. So this is a very convenient package. It's very pretty and it looks easy. Don't be fooled, right? There's a lot that goes into creating this bar. And we want to make sure that that process is a just process, that we're prioritizing people and not profit. And that's an intro to what fair trade is. So in order to begin, just a quick sense, you don't even have to give me a dictionary definition, but what is fair trade? Who does it prioritize? What idea do we have about it already? Yeah?
That the people who grow the product get a just wage for their efforts.
First principle, we're going to talk about 7 principles, and if somebody mentions one, I'm going to pause on it, is a fair or living wage. The market, by virtue of free market, determines a price for coffee.
and chocolate and goods, but that price is not enough to provide for the basic needs of farmers and their families. And fair trade is a way of ensuring that farmers are able to provide for themselves and their families. And through CRS Fair Trade, we're making sure that it's not only farmers individually that are benefited, but that children are benefited who can then grow up and have power, have voice in their communities to be able to pull themselves out of poverty in the long run. So that it's not a quick fix, right? It's not handing you some money and here you have food for a day. No, we're getting your children involved. We're going to make sure we're with you in the long term. So fair living wage, fair price, living wage. Thank you. Whoa, here we go. Safe working conditions. So we talked about child and slave labor. In some contexts, children are important to participate in the life of the family and the life of the farm. So it's not that children can't work, it's that there's a set of principles in line to make sure that that work is fair and that these kids are going to school. We want to make sure these kids are going to school, right? Safe working conditions. Also, making sure that either pesticides are eliminated or farmers who need to use them know how to use them safely and use the best versions of them and have funding to make sure that those pesticides are safe. Safe working conditions. Yeah.
In addition to paying people a fair price for the crop, also providing money to invest in projects within that community, like building a school or ward or so on. So you're not just getting money directly for what you sold.
I don't need to do anything. What am I doing here? This is great. Technical assistance and communal assistance. So 2 examples of what this looks like. The living wage that is paid to farmers and producers doesn't come in the form of a handout saying, here you go, extra money. It comes in the form of a social premium. So money that is given to communities for them to decide together, what are we going to do with this? Oftentimes, communities who are farmers in the conventional model who have moved to fair trade suddenly say, we have this money, let's get clean water. That would be great. And let's build a clinic that everyone in our community, not just the farmers, can benefit from. Let's get some better teachers so that our kids can go to school. So fair trade, technical assistance, social premiums benefit the whole community, right? Another example of what this looks like, I would encourage all of you to have a conversation with Tom, who is giving out fair trade coffee. He's with CRS Fair Trade's partner, Equal Exchange, which is a local organization, a huge warehouse. It's an awesome place to visit. And he has seen in Nicaragua CRS Fair Trade and Equal Exchange working together to make sure that farmers of cocoa who have been affected by a fungus called La Roya, which has affected, I think, 90% of cocoa crops in Nicaragua right now, aren't abandoned. The conventional system would say, sorry, your crop is bad, good luck providing for yourselves. Fair trade emphasizes relationships, right? And Catholic Relief Services make sure that these farmers are being accompanied in times of really bad luck. That's what farms are subject to, right? So, technical assistance. What else we got? Yeah?
Democratic cooperatives.
Oh my goodness. This is amazing. Okay, cooperatives. So fair trade emphasizes small farms and cooperatives. Why? Small farms and cooperatives are where groups and communities are most likely to be able to exercise their voice, to decide with each other, what are we going to do about this, and to be given ownership, right? So conventional model, a farmer, a producer, wakes up, goes however many miles on a bus or walking to a factory or a farm, picks, gets a little bit of money and goes home and works for this boss, right? In a cooperative or in a small model, these farmers and producers are their own owners. And they say, this is the money that we have, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to maximize our outreach to our consumers? It's a model of empowerment. Great. Other things. How many do we have left? 3, she says. Okay, I can just run through them. Being open to public accountability. So in fair trade models, this looks like a third-party verifier who has no stake in the matter coming in and saying, yep, you all are doing these 7 things correctly. We certify this product to be fair trade. There are organizations, Starbucks, who are doing great things to get better in the system. They are promoting a practice called cafe practices, which means that they, with a business consultant firm, have decided we are going to measure up to these standards with all of our coffee. That's awesome, but it isn't open to a third party's accountability. Also, chances are you show up at the gates of a coffee plantation or a chocolate plantation somewhere in Africa or Latin America, you're not going to be let in to see what's going on. If you go to a CRS fair trade project, come on in, we'd love to show you what's happening. Look at how these people are improving their lives. Thanks for coming, right? Public accountability. Finally, this is kind of a double whammy here. Employment opportunities for the disadvantaged, which in the developing world focuses on women. Because studies have found if you empower a woman, you empower a community. Women are the heads, are the health of their community. So particularly programs for women, for girls to make sure that they can go to school, because it's not just like we want to help women because they're not as helped in the international market. It's look at what, if you help a woman, look at what this does for a community. And also people with physical disabilities who are otherwise marginalized. If you go and you talk to Scott Cooper from Catholic Charities Spokane, he's selling fair trade products right now. Well, don't go right now, but selling fair trade products over there. And he's selling these baskets that were made by these women that have some sort of condition in, I want to say Malawi, I don't remember what country. Did you hear him?
Having given birth.
Fistula, that's what it is.
Yeah, they're ostracized from their community, from their families.
So these women who otherwise would just be ignored are given a way out, right? A way to participate in society and to realize I have a voice, I have talent, I have dignity. Yeah? Opportunities for the disadvantaged. So those are the 7 principles of fair trade. We had a video about it, but I'm getting the sense that all of you have a pretty basic idea of fair trade. The fact that it emphasizes relationships on making just relationships between us and our brothers and sisters around the world. So I think we're going to skip that video. Yes, ma'am.
I only have 6.
Okay. So fair price, living wage, long-term safe technical assistance, open accountability. Employment opportunities for disadvantaged. Long-term relationships. I'd sort of been alluding to this. It takes 3 years for a coffee bean, maybe Mike could talk about this, to go from a bean to a cup. And that's a long time for something to go wrong. CRS has been on the ground in these countries for decades and has seen the benefits of sticking with people for the long term and not abandoning them in any portion of the value chain as these product routes are table. So, long-term relationships, thank you for reminding me. There's going to be a fair amount of time for discussion, so I'd invite you, if questions or concerns came up, to table those towards the end of our presentation. For now, we are going to move into a discussion specific to us about why is fair trade Catholic. Oh, and in the meantime, Kelly's going to get a mic.
Why is it Catholic?
Yeah. So I guess in the meantime, any questions arise from what we just talked about? Yeah.
In the field, is there a tension between the conventional growers and the fair trade growers? Like, do the conventional growers feel threatened by the fair trade growers, and so is there tension?
The sense that I get, there are conventional growers that are being helped, and that there are models that aren't specific to fair trade that are making sure that farmers who don't have access to fair trade are still benefited. So there isn't this idea of like
which is better. But we also should keep in mind that, at least in farms, communities are pretty like rural and isolated, and there isn't much opportunity for conversation with farmers nearby who are going through different models. If you're nearby, chances are you're part of that group. So I think more of the competition comes in on a higher level along the chain. Yeah.
Even though if Kiva's, the microloan business of Kiva, they have coffee farms that you can donate for women and so forth. Even though if they're,
I haven't heard about that. No, I'll have to look into that. Kiva.
KIVA, yeah, it's been around a long time. It's a microloan for English women in all over the world. Money to them and they pay it back.
Microlending, good.
Yeah, but they've just started in the last 6 months to put women who are growing coffee on small farms and so forth. I wondered if they were part of. I assume that they're probably doing fair trade with that. It's a small farm and they buy it.
Thanks for your questions. We'll move on to Kelly.
We'll get back to more questions about fair trade specifically. But I want to talk about is fair trade Catholic? Or why would it be? Why would we want to incorporate this in our families and our parishes and our schools and in our communities? So, harken back to, I think everybody said they were here last night at Joe's keynote at the Tobin, almost everybody. But what it really gets down to, and we're going to do an activity in a minute, but I do just want to make sure that, and this, I'm afraid I'm reiterating information that we all know, but I don't think you can say it enough. So, fair trade is about relationships, which is how Heather brought us to, and the relationships are between consumer and producer. They're between ourselves and our communities, and they're between ourselves, our communities, and God. So one of the pieces that both Archbishop Sample and Joan spoke about last night was the idea of the whole human person, and that we are one body in Christ. So the commandment isn't to love God and then also the commandment to love your neighbor, but it's one commandment, that you love God and you love your neighbor. So in the spirit of the one body of Christ, is everyone familiar with 2 feet of love in action? So there is often the tendency in our parishes, in our own lives, to live out our faith with this particular bias. So maybe our call to serve the poor and to love God we see in supporting St. Vincent de Paul with money, or we see with working at a food bank. And we're encouraged to recognize that that is great, and that also we need to change the systems that create situations where people are in need of a food bank or in need of an organization like St. Vincent de Paul. So the 2 feet of love in action are charity, which is the works, charitable works, and justice, which is removing the root causes. So charity is the accompaniment of being with a person and walking with them. And justice is witnessing their story and speaking against the injustice that the systems that created a situation where a person would be in need of charity. So they go together, and just like the one body in Christ, just like loving God and our neighbor, you wouldn't want to have one foot. I kind of don't like this analogy to a certain extent because it kind of picks on maybe a person with a different ability, but ideally you would have 2 feet and you'd be walking with both evenly, and you would have the whole person. So fair trade accomplishes both of these. These are Catholic principles. It accomplishes the accompaniment and the charity by the principles, the 7 fair trade principles that Heather just went over. Providing a living fair wage, letting people work, letting people change themselves and transform their communities. And it also works at the justice, the witness, and it changes the systems in the conventional trade system, and by that allows us an opportunity to participate in an alternative to sort of the corporate run, unjust human dignity, at the expense of human dignity system. So for the most part, we need to think of social action as both feet, as the whole person, as one body in Christ. So how do we do that with fair trade is that it's a really Christian response to our consumer choices. And with that, we're going to get into Catholic social teaching. And I want to reference your packets that you brought. This is the Spanish one, but in your packets are the 7 themes of social teaching, Catholic social teaching, which I didn't know was going to be in there, but it's awesome. So for this particular activity, we're going to ask you to get into groups. And I believe what we'll do is groups of 2, and there'll be 2 groups of 3. So pair up, I guess. And I'm going to hand out, everyone's going to receive a social teaching square. Are you guys happy to be together?
Do 2? Do the same groups?
Do 3? You want to be a 3?
Sure.
Do you 2? You guys together?
Thank you.
2, 3s. I did my math right. And what is it? All right, so each pair or threesome has one principle of Catholic social teaching. So I'm going to ask you to read one out loud. We'll go around the room. And if anybody has an immediate response to their Catholic social teaching principle or a comment that they'd like to make with that. So I'll give you a minute to read it in your pair together. Decide who is going to read it aloud for the group. And if you have any addition or comment to it. Yeah, I see the distinct topic. Okay, let's come back together and we'll take turns and we'll just go around the room reading them. So, which one of you got? Let's start with Norman.
You want the whole?
Yeah, read the whole card, please.
This one is solidarity. We are one human family. We are brothers and sisters, keepers. Wherever they may be, loving our neighbor has global dimensions in a shrinking world. This is at the core of the virtue of solidarity. That's from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Fair trade means we recognize and respect the hard work that farmers and artisans do. By purchasing their coffee, chocolate, and crafts, we stand in solidarity with them by supporting their economic livelihoods.
Any addendum? Any comments on that? Any notes? You don't have to, just wondering.
I don't right now.
So I see in that accompaniment very much, right? The sort of what Pope Francis talks about, being with people, solidarity. And we can do that, as you said, with fair trade. So.
Ben said wherever they are, so it feels like you can walk with them even though they're a world away from.
It's a global vision.
We have community and participation, and our quote is from Pope Benedict. It is good for people to realize that purchasing is always a moral and not simply an economic act. People have a right and duty to participate in society and to seek the common good and well-being of all, especially the poor and vulnerable. When you buy fair trade products, you are participating in the economy in a morally just way.
Well, I can speak to coffee roasting. I started 11 years ago, and coffee was at an all-time low. And so fair trade was very important to me. And it has been a way that I knew that I could help people in countries and inform my customers. I'm still a small roaster, but I can let people know what fair trade's about, what people are going through. My buyers, I buy through Royal Coffee, and they always send out flyers and information. And one of the things that they sent out a few years ago was that coffee producing areas are also some of the areas where there's the most landmines left behind from wars. So there's a lot of different aspects of coffee producing.
Is this true just for the fair trade properties or for all?
Excuse me, what?
The landmines, is that everywhere?
It's everywhere, yeah. And fair trade establishes a fair base. And to answer one question earlier is about competition. There's always a little bit of competition. It seems to keep people in the co-ops. When prices are high, it's a little easier for somebody to say, well, I can get a little bit better price over here. And that creating solidarity is an important aspect of fair trade and keeping the co-op together and keeping people interested in working as a community.
Thank you. And so having the vision be bigger than just economic, but you know, the whole participating in an economy that serves people first and not the other way around. Let's get to third one.
We have dignity of work, and the quote is from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. The economy should serve people, not the other way around. And it goes on to say, all the principles of fair trade embody this principle of Catholic social teaching. Fair trade promotes the dignity of workers by ensuring fair wages and by helping vulnerable producers maintain their livelihoods when traditional economic structures shut them out.
And the dignity of work, when it comes to relating it to fair trade, is really, you know, kind of the bigger picture. I think the dignity of work is maybe like the basis one. If you're going to participate in any part of the market, how do we ensure that people are served first? Then we are viewing this with an eye to the dignity of the human person throughout the process.
So the CRS follows this to make sure that this is happening?
Absolutely. CRS Fair Trade, yes.
So they're there every step of the way.
Not only do they follow it, they're doing it. We're doing it on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they actually own all of it. But it's individual farmers who own the land now.
So I didn't hear the
It's
question.
individual farmers that own the land?
What is it, CRS?
In cooperatives, the farmers
CRS
themselves
doesn't own the land.
who own them. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
CRS.
CRS serves the farmers or the cooperative. Do you want to read yours while I'm moving?
We had rights and responsibilities, and they quoted Pope Paul VI saying, if you want peace, work for justice. And the message was that every person has basic rights that flow from our human dignity, And we all have the responsibility to respect the rights of others and to work for economic justice. And fair trade is a tangible way to respect the right to work for and vulnerable. And when we think of respecting the rights that flow from our human dignity, we're thinking of shelter, food, health care, education, those sorts of things.
The community and
Right.
And I was thinking also of the principle that Heather raised up of safe working conditions, and the technical.
And Project was talking about last night about women and safety.
Safety, yeah.
And safety in the community. And the home too.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and hear this one. Our quote is from Pope Benedict, and the principle is stewardships of God's creation. The concerns for nonviolent, sustainable development, justice and peace, and care for our environment are of vital importance for humanity.
Treating the environment with respect and ensuring that resources will be available for future generations is a core principle of fair trade. Fair trade means that we are good stewards of the planet by protecting both God's people and the planet through our economic choices. And I think sometimes that's often overlooked in our Catholic social teaching as the environment. And God in Genesis told us to be good stewards of the land. He gave us that responsibility. And oftentimes we don't think about that. And it's, I think that with fair trade, we are using that responsibility and helping to make things a lot better.
Thank you.
I guess just to follow up on that, within the principle of safe and healthy working conditions is an emphasis on environment and environmental sustainability, because if you keep a community healthy, you keep the environment healthy, you're also keeping people healthy. So that is by nature something that fair trade promotes that we don't want to forget about.
And so the relationships that are becoming transformed through fair trade are also our relationship with our earth and our planet and the world. Let's do the next one.
Our quote is from the Gospel. It's the option for the poor and vulnerable. It's Matthew 25:40. Whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And fair trade recognizes the dignity of the work performed by traditional artisans and farmers and ensures that they are fairly compensated. When you choose fair trade products, you are exercising a preferential option for the poor. So again, safe and dignity of the person.
In CRS Fair Trade, one of its principles is opportunities specifically for the disadvantaged. And the last one here.
So our theme is dignity of the human person, and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops say every economic decision and institution must be judged in light of whether it protects or undermines the dignity of the human person. And the explanation is human dignity comes directly from God. Fair trade recognizes this by creating economically just, long-term trading partnerships between diverse people from all over the world. I think it's easy to see how human dignity, we've talked about dignity already, is obviously a reason to support fair trade, because it's about recognizing the value of everybody and their worth, really, regardless of their economic circumstances.
And I think also, again, that idea of relationships and the idea that this isn't a quick fix Band-Aid, but it's a longer term vision, right? This is transforming ourselves, transforming our communities, transforming our world into becoming, living into the inbreaking of God's kingdom. That's how I see it. All right, and so we have another activity, I guess, and this is also in groups, but we need 4 groups, so maybe some of you could cluster together and do groups of 4 or 5, or maybe 3 or 4. I might be getting the numbers wrong.
We're only 2, right?
Okay, we'll turn around.
Should we just follow around the room?
Villarone.
Where's the room?
And I'll just talk while you guys form into groups, but so keeping in mind the fair trade principles that Heather raised up for us, and then referencing the Catholic social teaching principles, which are hopefully not new information, but always good to be reminded of. Hi, Joy.
Want us to be a small group?
Here we go. So we're going to read the story in these small groups aloud to each other, and we'll have some time for that to read, and there's some reflection questions on the back. And then after a little while, letting you all discuss in your smaller groups, you can think of maybe one new learning or something that's just burning in a response to the story and this experience that we can share as a larger group. Does that make sense?
So this is in Conocado in the Dominican Republic. Conocado is an organization. The National Confederation of Dominican Cacao Producers, Conocado, is an organization of small-scale cacao producers in the Dominican Republic. Conocado began its development project in 1989 during a low in the global cocoa market to study how cacao fermentation techniques could improve the quality of cacao production in the Dominican Republic. After successfully proving that higher quality fermented cacao could increase income to small farmers, Conocado expanded its work to educate cacao farmers, organizing into block associations of farmers in particular geographic areas. Conocado then entered a commercialization phase of the project, focused on finding niche markets for their high-quality cacao.
Over the past 20 years, Conocado has grown from 700 members organized in 3 blocks to 9,500 members organized in 9 blocks with 142 local community associations throughout the Dominican Republic. Each of the blocks has a similar organizational structure, a general assembly that meets once a year to approve work plans and decide how premiums will be used, an assembly of delegates with 2 delegates per association that meets once a month to report on work plan progress at the community level, a governing board that meets once a month to execute the work plan, and an administrative committee that meets once a week to follow up on the work plan to make sure it is going as it should.
Prior to the formation of Conocado, 100% Dominican cacao production was low quality, unfermented beans shipped mainly to the United States. These beans were purchased from the roughly 40,000 cacao farmers by the 4 major Dominican exporters who hold a strong grip on the local market. Today, Conocado produce approximately 25% of cacao exported from the Dominican Republic, and the organization has become a powerful alternative for small-scale producers. The cooperative success and quality improvement in marketing means that 70% of their cacao is sold in high-quality fermented beans, primarily
The beautiful
to
products
European
sold through the
markets.
TRS Fair Trade Program
Biodynamic
are created by over 100 producer groups in over 30 countries. Soapstone carving is one basket from Ghana, olive oil from Palestine, mangoes from the Philippines, and the products from
Just here? Over 40% of cacao is sold on the fair trade market. Each year, the cooperative fair trade premiums are distributed to the blocks for use in community projects, which have included full I'll go into it. Education, infrastructure, health, and development. Education, school supplies and scholarships for members' children. Repair and build schools, training for the children of the cacao producers in administration so they can eventually take farms over from parents.
It also reminds us of
structures and road projects to connect isolated producers with their neighbors, wells for water in communities, houses for members unable to purchase a home on their own, electricity projects, and collection centers in communities to reduce distance and travel time from harvest to plantation. Health is medicine for health clinics. They contact doctors for procedures in clinics, repair clinic buildings. Development, cacao route, ecotourism project to diversify income source for cacao farmers and share the common cacao model. Grants to women's organizations producing cacao wine, chocolate, and baked goods. The biggest challenge facing cacao today are the development of infrastructure to produce more high-quality cacao and generalization turnover where youth are not interested in taking over the family farm. Regardless, Ghana cacao continues to grow, invest in needed infrastructure, and advance its primary goals to maintain leadership, improve the standard of living for small cacao farmers, support substantial community development, and persevere the environment. CRS partner equal exchange sources cacao for use in cocoa, baking cocoa, and chocolate.
Over the course of my travels and
The question
discussions with
is, how does
producers
this
and
story
fair
make you
traders
feel
globally,
as a
what
Catholic?
became clear to me is that in
And there's a
context
quote
of
here that says,
marginalization,
the economy
occupation,
exists for the person, not the person for the economy.
have real-life lessons
Is that
for
our
the
answer?
Palestinians. I also learned
Or what, how does this make you feel as a Catholic?
in addition to providing hardware and fair trade, renovating buildings, working ovens, jars,
Like we're
actually jars, they also provide training on what fair trade is and its potential for Palestinian workers. Skill building also involves
not only
knowledge
their
about a
profit,
basic
their community, their whole, we're not just helping the farmers,
so in ways that are high quality and healthy for
families, the whole
consumers.
community.
Indeed, not job,
And
whose name means success, is particularly key for us to understand future goals
And it's been
and
proven
convincing
it's not
consumers
Yes.
that the
One
ultimate
job by
profit
the
will remain.
It's not just a
They are
temporary
healthy
help,
and
help one
local,
season, and then it goes
the women agree.
We're in it for the long haul.
The products are produced as products just on
I
the
think
shelf.
it's easier, and there are times when I'm very disappointed.
It's going to.
But in these areas,
And these are the questions that we ask.
structures out
Fair trade fits the other regulations.
Society has a moral obligation, including government action where necessary, to ensure opportunity, basic human needs,
This
and
word
justice.
because one of our young children
As our nation works to encourage
Oh, yeah, that's
especially if they go to
It's
Tanny.
responsible
We don't have much talent for young adults.
families, workers, and multiple
They're not getting the word of what is actually the good that the Catholic Church is doing. The only thing they get on
Our
the
nation
is the problems the Catholic Church has.
As our nation
Don't get
enters
their
current economic crisis,
crisis.
how can we make sure that our nation's responses benefit everyone, including families, workers,
CRS has
Fair trade.
and make sure our leaders
As a bookkeeper at St. Francis, I get the privilege of receiving someone wants his back, counting, which, I mean, that must be a count.
Can't be any worse than that, right?
The school turns in. So many family
Catching up with
facilities, or in each student. How they interact with our people. They are so excited. One little thing insisted her mother bring it to school, to my office right away because it was full and she wanted to get another one. So she got it. She was a great girl. And I think it's also but something that we have to get across, and it pertains to
But they're,
they need to have opportunity.
yes, I know.
Involved in these
The stories,
Right.
It's just that we have to become clear about some of what they were talking about last night is that jump stories.
Right.
How do we learn about what's going on on the ground?
Yeah,
Right.
not creating a spin.
And you know, like they said last night, these videos are going to be on YouTube. This is a wonderful way to get it back for our review and our sort of refresh what we learned. A way to bring other people in and let them get their own copy. God's word never goes out void. It always goes out, and if we can get people to come in, it goes out by word of mouth. You know, what's actually going on. People come and see the video and then they tell somebody else and they tell somebody else. Maybe spread out through the community. I think it's
Even to get up as an announcement, our group is very wonderful in the sense that if you've attended a conference like this, and writing a short synopsis or putting in an announcement so people have a chance to read it, to get up and say, here's some areas that you might be interested in, these are the places that you should go to research about. It's the fire of evangelization again. It's
encouraging that other foot.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Oh, everybody has to do one of those things.
Okay, let's big group it up again and wrap up, finish your thoughts.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, and I do want to hear, you can stay in your groups, I'd love to just hear anything that came up from the story reactions or in the discussion. Would like to hear from each group. And then one of the questions, maybe it does or doesn't strike you, but if you saw any of our fair trade principles and the Catholic social teaching principles in the story that you had, or how this made you feel as a Catholic. Would any group like to go first? We'll start with this group. Or you guys? Okay. We'll start with you guys.
You got the paper.
I've got the paper. Ownership is my tip of the law right now. What do you want to
We
hear
all have
about?
different stories?
Yeah.
Do we all have different
Yes,
stories?
you're the only ones with your story. But rather than recap it for the whole group, I think I'd just like to hear how did the story make you feel?
I felt that it was empowering for the people that the story was about. I was glad to read about it or hear about it. I felt that the women, it was a women's project that in Palestine, and that it was helping the women and also helping the community that they were living in, because they were able to sell their products to hotels in Jerusalem and a couple other places.
Did you feel connected to the story as a Catholic?
I did.
Why?
I just felt that by reading the story, I was kind of walking their journey with them through reading the story.
So accompanying it, even just by hearing the story.
Well, I also felt that, there's so much, we hear so much negative publicity that comes out of the Palestinian-Israeli relations and stuff, and I think this is a positive. It makes me feel good to be a Catholic because this is positive works to improve the lives of Palestinians.
Thank you, yeah. So it's a story of hope.
I was not aware that that Fred Meyer is selling, what's the name of it? The Divine chocolate bars. And I have no idea that Divine was CRS related to the project, that it was fair trade even. If I'm going to buy chocolate from now on, I definitely will go to Fred Meyer.
Awesome.
And
I should say, no, make sure, I've seen some Fred Meyers carry fair trade, not all of them. So just, don't go right and hey, where is it?
But divine, that
Divine,
is a good one. They might
carry it. Even in that story, it was a good story of how it started really small and grew to be so big that here it is carried in some of our neighborhood stores.
Corporate chain.
Yeah, and I mean, earlier in your talks, and talking about the 7 principles, and in my mind, I was thinking, okay, so even if I start buying fair trade coffee, what is that really going to change? I was starting to feel like even if, really, can we really make a difference? And then that made me feel like, well, I guess we can, a little bit at a time.
So is the fair trade coffee sold in grocery stores more expensive than?
We can get to that question in the Q&A.
Okay.
Okay, let's hear from the organized group. So with our story, which is about Dominican cacao farmers, it made us feel proud to be Catholic. It made us feel proud because it was good to hear a positive story about Catholicism. We talked about how when the Catholic Church and Catholicism is talked about in the media, it's generally negative stories about the problems that the Catholic Church has, and you don't hear positive stories like this one where situation has been changed long term for a community through a development project. So we talked about how we felt a connection to the people who had benefited from that project. We felt proud that we're associated with them through the Catholic Church, and we wanted more people to hear stories like this to get a different impression of what the Catholic Church is doing, and not only the negative impression that you would get if you just listen to what the media say about it.
The good news.
Yeah,
it's good news. We want to tell everybody this good news, these good stories.
Right. Ours was a cooperative that was set up in Uganda, the refugees from Sudan. I'm going to say it, but I'm not pronouncing it right. Al-Wasru. It stands for the International Widows Association of South Sudanese Refugees in Uganda. They were able to actually buy some land. It doesn't say specifically what products they sell, but agricultural products. And they would buy some land, and women have been able to send the children to school and home. It's a big stuff. And someone always used it, but hope was the word that we, give the people some hope. Something to get out of bed for. If you just know you're going to just get beat up if you work.
And it transformed the whole community, not just the landowners. It's cool. So we're going to move into the fair trade in practice, but I think, Heather, are you? We're showing everybody something to sort of let this become integrated.
What does SERRB stand for?
So what it stands for is actually not relevant to what the organization does now, which is why they don't tell a lot of people. Okay, it's something about refugee rehabilitation, and serve as one of our partners, and we'll talk about them right now, enseguida. So Catholic Relief Services Fair Trade Program. This is what we really want to promote with you all. Fair trade is a good thing in general, but specifically fair trade through our program we know works, and we've seen it work over decades, right, with long-term relationships. So CRS Fair Trade, how does our fair trade program work? Firstly, we have ambassadors who are trained to go and talk about fair trade in communities and to motivate other people to jump into CRS Fair Trade, and I can talk about that with you if you're interested in it. Also, we have 3 goods that we are involved in promoting. Chocolate and crafts are the first 2. Our national chocolate partners, one is Divine, that this group read about, and you can read all about them on our website. And our other chocolate partner is Here Today, Equal Exchange. They're also providing coffee and dessert for everybody, a fair trade dessert after lunch. So we'll hear a little bit about Equal Exchange later. They also have a huge and awesome warehouse in the Northwest Industrial area in Portland, and they're very open to groups coming through. I brought a youth group there one time, and it was, oh, look at all this stuff from all over the world, and it smells so good, and they gave us free coffee and chocolate. Coffee for teenagers is not always a good thing, but it was still fun. So those are our chocolate partners. Our craft partner is Serve, and I wish I could remember what it stands for you, but they don't talk about it anymore, which is a craft organization. And the unique thing, or not just craft, sorry, they do lots of things. They do soap, they do jewelry, they do clothing, they also promote chocolate. And Serve, the unique thing about Serve, not only are they fair trade and nonprofit and handmade, they are incredibly committed to care for God's creation. So all of their goods that they bring from the countries that they're partnering in, they ship on boats instead of flying them on planes so as to be better stewards of the earth. And they also use entirely forest-certified paper, so paper that has been recycled. So they are an excellent organization to support. And we actually have some catalogs in the back of the room that we will show you shortly, Serve and some of the stuff that we do. Our next product that we promote is the second highest traded commodity underneath crude oil in the world, and it is coffee. Coffee. We need our coffee. Oh my gosh. And this is a way to really make an impact, right? Our coffee partners, if you go to crsfairtrade.org, which is written for you on a paper there, you can find it all over, everything we gave you, and you click on products and partners, you find a list of the local coffee retailers and roasters that we partner with. And it doesn't show on this screen, I'm sorry, but if you go to the bottom of the list, there's a West list, right? And one group is Equal Exchange. They're also a coffee roaster, and you're having fair trade coffee provided by Equal Exchange today. So we would invite you to check that out on our website here. So, of course, important to buy fair trade individually, but specifically CRS fair trade. This is the real kicker, and it kind of takes a little while. It took me a little while to get used to this. Like, I did not understand how it works. The thing with CRS fair trade, when you buy through one of our partners listed on the website, and you say, either on the phone call or when signing up for email or putting in your account to buy a craft, you say, I am a CRS supporter. So you make that known somehow, right? Our partners donate a percentage of their profits to the CRS Fair Trade Fund. Thanks. Next slide. And what this fund does, it is money that CRS recycles back into our economic justice programs worldwide through grants to artisans, to farmers, to communities, and to do greater outreach in fair trade in the United States. So this, you say, hi, my name is Norman, I'm a supporter of CRS, and I'd like to place an order for for my parish coffee. We're going to do a coffee tasting. Oh, he's a supporter of CRS. They check a box. A percentage of that profit goes to CRS. In fact, the Economic Program Justice Head just got a $2,000 check from Equal Exchange, which goes right into our programs overseas. So that is why we would like to motivate you to buy through our partners and to say, I am a CRS supporter. I'm calling because I heard about this through my faith, because that's even better for people. So that's our, what's it called? Fund. That's our Fair Trade Fund. That's the word I'm looking for. The other thing, there was a slide up here that says every dollar can be a vote for God's kingdom. And it is so, every time we spend money or even call on our phone, get in our car, it's so important to recall what has gone behind this to make this possible for me. And we say that every time we buy fair trade, we're casting a vote for God's kingdom. But when you buy CRS fair trade, you're casting 2 votes, because you're saying, I am a CRS supporter, and I want to support this fund, and I also want to support fair trade with my purchase. Cool? Cool. They say cool. So we are going to move into some practical ways that you can bring fair trade to your communities so that you're not alone in it. Sound good?
I was going to talk about fair trade and youth, but it doesn't seem from the show of hands that that's going to be that practical for very many of you. So if it is and you want to talk about that afterwards, come find me.
What was the question again?
Working fair trade and youth, working with youth. Catholic youth. I saw one hand. Maybe.
Well, I mean, I have 3 teenagers,
There you
and
go.
I think they're all
and
entering into the consumer world. So are you talking about how to teach them why it's important to buy fair trade
more
items,
like parish youth minister resources. But I will say that, and this isn't just for youth, but what's so exciting about fair trade is how particularly easy it is. It's not something that you're doing in addition to the life that you're living. It's transforming the way that you're already drinking coffee, eating chocolate, buying gifts. So this is the CERV website, but it's the Easter season, and maybe we all know somebody who's receiving confirmation or First Communion. Mm-hmm. You can give a gift of faith that is like a double gift of faith because it's been produced by CRS Fair Trade. So there's 3 votes for the God's Kingdom that Heather was talking about. Super easy. And then in terms of just parish and individual actions, this is me with different hair, and this is the Divine Fair Trade Advent calendar, and they do these every year, and it's kind of, there's like a Jesus, but then there's like all these other people. It's really kind of cool, so you can give it to maybe your non-Catholic friends that like chocolate. And I buy 10 every Advent season, and I just take them with me to like Thanksgiving or whatever, and I sell them to my family and to my friends. Or you can do that at the parish level, and you could have an Advent, they do the craft sale, fair trade crafts at Advent. That's what a lot of our parishes do. But even if maybe fair trade isn't something that's not everyone in the parish is comfortable with yet, you could start small and just do the Advent calendar and start talking about fair trade and get those conversations happening. One of the things that one of our parishes do is they make fair trade coffee, CRS fair trade coffee. It's just part of parish life. So once a month they have a fair trade coffee sale, CRS fair trade coffee sale, once a month. So you go to Mass every Sunday, you need coffee, you buy your monthly supply at Mass. And it's CRS, it's fair trade, it's easy. And you're participating without really even having to think about it too much. So it's another way also to start a conversation about why fair trade and CRS fair trade is important as Catholics, why it is a simple thing we can do to transform our shopping and consuming habits and our connection to our global family, and how when we do that hopefully we're transforming our parish community into a more just place. So it's super, I think, it's very easy, it just takes a little effort. Now if you want to go deeper, if you're involved in your parish, there's a document on the CRS Fair Trade website called Put Your Money Where Your Heart Is. Put your money where your heart is. The parish budget is a moral document. And it has it in a challenge to your parish to commit to fair trade for 1 year, CRS Fair Trade for 1 year. And it talks about what might be the hesitancies or the fears or the concerns in doing so. And then it allows you to sort of bring that up with your finance council and your pastor and get to a point where you can do it for 1 year, kind of test year, trial run year to see how it goes. Chances are that in that year, you're going to convert everybody to become more interested in fair trade. For one thing, because it is so easy, and for another, because it starts these conversations that go beyond just coffee or just chocolate or just me in the grocery store. So, and then I know everyone has questions, so. But I did want, if anyone had any best practices, so maybe you guys can find each other in the time between now and lunch and share what works that you've seen.
Do you need a tax number to order it for your parish?
No. We do not. Coffee chocolate crafts at CERV. And we have the brochures, catalogs.
I have a question. We could go to Starbucks and buy coffee that's already made. Is there some place that you know of in Portland where you can go and get their equal exchange coffee that's brewed and, do they have a coffee shop?
They do in Seattle.
Well, I'm not sure if they do in Portland. You could ask the Equal Exchange rep who's here that question though.
Okay.
And I know that there are cafes, if you say, I'd like fair trade coffee, please. Portland is great for that. People say fair trade is inconvenient. That is not the case in this part of the country.
I have a question. If I wanted to take some information for my youth minister about the youth program, could I get that from you?
Yes. And I'll say for your children, but the most simple thing if you're already a social media person really is to like CRS Fair Trade on Facebook. And I'll tell you why. Because it shows up in your news feed, and just by virtue of being online, it enters into your psyche. And I think that there's definitely something to be said for that. It brings it to awareness. And maybe eventually, if you see enough posts, you'll go visit the page and tap into those resources.
So, I don't mean this as a criticism, but I'd say compared to Britain, this country is probably 10 years behind in terms of the popularity and the knowledge of fair trade. One of the differences I think that's really significant is that in Britain there is a fair trade mark. So any fair trade product that conforms to certain standards that are audited has that mark. So every product you're looking for that same mark, and that's made a real difference in terms of consumers recognizing what's fair trade. Here, there are lots of different competing schemes with different logos, and you don't really know this specific product, what does this scheme mean if I buy this particular thing, because it's all different. It isn't in Britain, it's one standard, so you know what that means. So I'm wondering whether there's any movement here to create a US fair trade mark that would mean that consumers would have more confidence because they'd know there was one set of standards they were buying into.
There is a U.S. fair trade mark. It looks like the top right. That is from an organization called Fair Trade USA. Top right is Fair Trade USA. Those are specific. The top left is Fair Trade International, which is also very respectable. Either one of those marks, if you find that on your coffee, chocolate, that is a good sign.
And also, though, if you're buying CRS Fair Trade, you don't have to worry about it.
And also that equal exchange on anything, that means you're supporting CRS and Fair Trade?
The Equal Exchange Company, yes.
That red and white, whatever that thing is.
They're partners.
But so if you buy Equal Exchange at a supermarket, they're not going to know you're a CRS Fair Trade supporter, right? You'd have to buy Equal Exchange through Equal Exchange and say, I'm a CRS Fair Trade supporter, or through the website. It's great to show up to a supermarket and buy Fair Trade coffee, but it's even better to go through CRS somehow.
Their website has a space where you can just type in CRS.
Yep.
It's like a promo code.
Yep.
Okay. But if you're a parish, it's pretty easy to identify yourself as a CRS supporter.
Yeah.
So in England, do they have like Catholic involvement in their fair trade?
Yeah, I would say probably a decade ago, or back even to the late 90s, fair trade really got started with people selling products after Mass, not just Catholics, but other Christian churches. From there, I would say in the early 2000s is when it went into stores in a big way. If you go into a British grocery store, you will find dozens and dozens of fair trade products and a far wider range than the range we've heard about today. And that's basically because of consumer support, that the big chains eventually saw that tipping point where so many people were asking and buying, and it was getting talked about so much in the media that they started to really get into it in a big way and provide a lot of products. And even actually through the economic downturn there, fair trade has hung on. I mean, fewer people are buying organic, but fair trade hasn't really lost ground in Britain, so it really has expanded. One other thing that we did in my community that I think made a real difference is we became a fair trade island. So this is, it's now international, but it started in Britain, and it's about communities becoming a fair trade town, or fair trade city, or fair trade island in our case. And basically, you have to conform to certain standards. You have to get your local government to sign up to support fair trade and various other bits and pieces. You need a certain concentration of fair trade businesses and suppliers in your area. Then you get this standard, you get to put plaques up around the area so people can see that your community supports fair trade. And that's been very popular. So a lot of towns and cities in Britain have done that.
And there are a couple in the United States. San Diego is a fair trade town. Springwater, Massachusetts. So that's something that we kind of, hey, Britain, great idea, and we're starting to hop online. We are 5 minutes overtime at this point. So are there any other quick questions? We'll be around. I'll be at the table. Good question.
Quick question is, I know we want to support Catholic Relief Services, but what other big agencies are supporting fair trade in other items? Like what Alice was saying, there's a variety of items in Britain.
There is a list. I wish I had time to call to your attention to the stuff that we handed out. This is just a makeshift list I made really quick of common items and where you can find these items fair trade.
Okay.
Notice that the top 4 or 5 are all CRS certified, so we encourage you to go through them, but we don't do fair trade soccer balls, for instance, but there is a group that does that. Roses, you can find those at Whole Foods. Body and hygiene products, you can find those at New Seasons. The other thing in your packet, real quick, is a CCGP info card. This is Catholics Confront Global Poverty. Joan Rosenhauer talked about it last night. It's an advocacy network. All it takes for you to be a member of CCGP is 90 seconds to open your email or turn on your phone and receive a text that says, lend your voice to stop human trafficking, sign this petition. Or lend your voice to stop the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a free trade agreement that is disadvantaging poor farmers. All you have to do is press a button to be involved in this. And it is proven that the Catholic Voice has done amazing things. So we'd like to encourage you all to sign up for that. And the other postcard that you have that looks like this is a sign-up sheet for CCGP. So if you want to fill your name, email, and zip code on this and give it to one of us, we will sign you up for CCGP. But you can also go online and click and you're done. Cool?
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.